This is the Chris Gray Show. I am facing so many quandaries these days about how to exist in the world. I posted this on Facebook the other day just to my friends and family that in the modern world, now it just seems like if you want to live a life in culture with a wide array of people, that you just have to accept that people have 10 to 15% of their brain devoted to a cult of some kind. Not everybody, but a lot of people do. And that you just have to, for yourself, decide how much or little exposure you want to have to those cults. If you want to engage with people and have like normal full lives. Now, of course, the other challenge is that you can start cutting people out when they don't fit the way you think, right? But I do think that's actually a privilege that some people have that some people don't have. If you're in a marginalized group in America, you actually are limited in terms of how many people you can cut out of your life and still maintain a viable home life, career, friend group. So anyway, this is just to say I posted this on Facebook the other day, and in the vast majority of people took it to mean that I meant people that are MAGA Trump supporters, which of course I do mean that. But I mean lots of other things, you know? I think there's a lot of cult thinking when it comes to Gaza and Palestine. And there just is a pretty sizable chunk of the people that I know that think a certain way about Gaza. And am I going to cut all of these people out of my life? Like, certainly there's an answer. Yes, you do cut them out of your life, right? Because you want to ostracize a certain way of thinking. You want to move the Overton window in terms of what is acceptable in terms of Israel's behavior in Gaza, right? Or the West Bank. But then there's another part of me that's like, if I stop being friends with somebody that I like socialize or hang out with in Los Angeles, California, what actual concrete effect does that have on the people that are starving and dying in Gaza? You know, if I make a TikTok about it, what does it actually do? And to what degree is there a performative nature to me posting about it and other people on TikTok and such posting about it, and the hundreds of thousands of commenters that want to strike a very strident opinion about it? I don't think it's interesting because I don't actually think that these questions are as easy as people want them to be. I think I was going to say it's a tough time to navigate these issues these days, but another part of me thinks that like that actually things aren't that much tougher than they used to be in some ways. I think that just more people now realize it. I do think that if you are a person of color or you're gay or you're queer or you're trans, like in some ways the last 8 years have been kind of not that it's not like, I think to some of it's not like the world changed. You know, I think there's a lot of talk recently about how things are getting so much worse than they were. And I think in some ways that it's just like people's natures have been revealed. So maybe things have gotten worse in the sense that it's more acceptable now to have like right-wing opinions, I guess. There's more outlets for like a random right-wing person in a very red state to create a TikTok and get followers. So that's more possible. I think the thing we would have said back in the day was that the internet has also made it more possible for people to reach each other, special interests to find each other. And that was, a thing we said was good. For everything that we say social media was bad about, I remember we used to say, yeah, but like the whole Arab Spring thing, I would argue Black Lives Matter. There are causes that have only been able to get momentum because of social media. And I think those would have been the easy answers back in the day. These days, I think maybe if we weighed all of the good and bad, it maybe is a net negative to have these things. And it's certainly the algorithms are a net negative. I guess that's the thing, is that coming from somebody who's like from an internet kid like me, or not even internet kid, like a modem kid, the connectivity was never the problem, I think. I don't know. I also think that the counter argument you can make is that places like 4chan and Something Awful, although Something Awful was more a comedy website, but let's say, I do think the vibes of Something Awful are not so different than the vibes that led to like Gamergate and 4chan and stuff. But whatever, let's say Something Awful wasn't one of these examples. You could argue that 4chan, though, it was not the product of an algorithmic social media. And 4chan was certainly a motherload of bad ideas, as Sam Harris would say, about other things. So anyway, the quandary that I'm in these days is, as a public person, like mildly public person, right, who wants to be more public, who wants to get to, like, perform more theater shows and more stand-up shows and improv shows and stuff like that, and who is adjacent to many projects that are certainly, if not overtly political, are very socially aware. It becomes this question where I start to feel more increasingly muzzled by the prospect of saying the wrong thing. Because I do have some opinions that are different than the mainstream, different than what you are supposed to say right now. And that's why I want to say that I'm voting for Donald Trump to be president for the third term. No. I mean, I've mentioned it before. I've mentioned it on my Patreon, which you can join. And I've mentioned it in previous things. But, like, my opinion of AI is certainly contrarian. And I realized after reading some essays about it that people that come from tech backgrounds have a different notion of what AI means to society than people that don't come from tech background, right? Which is not to say that if you understand AI, you have a different perspective. My contention is that no one actually understands AI. So maybe that's an argument that it's dangerous. I think to some of us, that's an argument that it's exciting. So yeah, I will say that I feel like most people, even people that work in AI, don't actually understand AI. There's a lot of times you hear about what people are doing with it, and they are like, "Oh, it's a black box. Like it's doing what we want at the moment, and we're trying to figure out how to make it better." But once it goes into its little machinations, we actually don't know what it's doing. But yeah, like I have a contrarian thing about AI, right? So, and I guess I want to make stuff. I want to create theater. I want to make comedy, and I want to make content like this that comes from how I really feel about the world, and not me trying to fit into what's correct or not. And I mean, Gaza is an example as well. I haven't seen anything about Gaza or what the West Bank that makes me think that what Israel is doing is a good thing. I just haven't. Like, in so many ways, it just seems bad. Not only in the like, hey, don't kill and starve people, right? Don't occupy their land. Don't create an apartheid state. Don't limit their movements. All that, right? And the stuff with the West Bank is like, there's documentation of it on film where the people don't even really deny that it's happening. It's so blasé. And that's me having only, like, not even fully watched all of Louis Theroux's The Settlers documentary that just came out. But not only from that perspective of, like, you're doing bad things, but also from the perspective of, are you making the Israeli people safer? I would argue that they're not. I would argue that Netanyahu is, if anything, creating the environments to breed more terrorist groups. And maybe they do destroy all of Hamas, right? Netanyahu just admitted to funding or arming other Islamic State clans in Palestine because they were, like, against Hamas, you know? Like, and I think they funded Hamas at one point too. But he just admitted to arming some of the, like, rival clans in Palestine because they would help get rid of Hamas. If your contention is that Islamic State clans want to wipe Israel off the map, is it a good idea to arm them? Is it like the enemy of my enemy is my friend? In their manifesto, they have that they want to wipe you off the planet, you know? Doesn't seem like a good idea to arm them. So anyway, I think that for people that are just, like, commenting on YouTube or TikTok, or people who don't want to have, like, a career in the arts where they're subject to, like, public opinion, I think it's easier to have a really strong opinion. Like, if I had gone down a different path and I was just a software engineer working somewhere in Texas on, like, you know, middleware for an oil company, occasionally doing comedy on the side or something, I think it'd be easier for me to have a public strident position about, let's say, Gaza. That I could be on my social media every day saying that Gaza is a genocide, which I do think it is. But also, side note, it's not even that I think it is, because I'm not a person qualified to say whether or not what Israel is doing in Gaza is a genocide. I'm just going by pretty much the overwhelming opinion of most scholars that study what genocides are, that say that this is one. It doesn't feel that different from trusting climate scientists that man-made climate change is real. It doesn't feel that different. It feels like I trust the expertise of the people who study it. I've read lots of things. So that's why I kind of want to force the issue by making episodes like this, where I'm saying this out loud. And I know that I have people that, I had somebody block me last week over this exact topic. A person that I've never met, but I'm friendly with on Facebook. To be fair, I said we should probably just, like, not be friends anymore because of the way it was being discussed. Because essentially, I was framed as anti-Semitic throughout the whole discussion for even saying that I think it's a genocide, or pointing out that there are other scholars that think it's a genocide. For pointing out that Palestinians have been shot at the humanitarian aid sites in Gaza by the IDF. And I wish I could have seen the response to this in this Facebook thread. By the way, if there's anywhere in the world you don't want to argue with me, it's in a Facebook thread. Because I have lots of time. I have lots of ability to research. I will go looking for the link. I will fully read the source that you... If you ever post a source against me in a Facebook thread, I will read the whole thing. And you post an article that cites a study, I will go to JAMA or wherever, download, maybe even pay for the PDF of the study, read the study. I'll make it my little project. So I wish I'd seen the reaction to this, because just in this discussion, there was a mention about how, like, people had been shot trying to get food at these aid sites. And they immediately said, that's been debunked. That didn't happen. And I said, well, I literally just read it on The Guardian today. I've been reading mostly The Guardian as an attempt to sort of like decouple myself from the New York Times and the LA Times and the Washington Post. I live in Los Angeles. The LA Times, I was trying to support for a while as like, I support my local newspaper. And then it got bought by an asshole. And then was it the Time? They like refused to endorse anybody for the presidential campaign. They suck. So I've been trying to read The Guardian. Also, The Guardian gave me a 4-star review. Edinburgh Fringe 2023. Is that part of it? So I've been trying to read The Guardian. The Guardian has a story about how these people had been shot, that 140 people had been shot in the last 2 weeks. The person I was arguing with said that it hadn't been debunked. And then other things came up, and they quoted a source to me from a website called Haaretz, or I don't know if it's a newspaper as well, but HAARETZ.com, which I have taken to be sort of like an Israeli Jewish news source, because I cited another source that was Al Jazeera. So Al Jazeera, which actually has a great reputation amongst journalistic circles, but understandably, I mean, that I don't fault somebody for being like, I don't trust Al Jazeera, I guess. Although by many accounts, they are a very well regarded news organization. But let's say they're not. They said they don't trust a source from Al Jazeera. So this person on some other topic posted one from Haaretz, which then I learned is, I think, considered a liberal, left-ish news source in that world, meaning that they are like I don't think Haaretz has not posted like an editorial that Gaza is a genocide, but it seems like if any of the news sources will eventually, they would be the one to do it. That's just a very cursory sense of what their reputation is. So on some other subject, they posted that, right? And I said, do you consider them to be a like legit source? And they said yes. And I said, great. Here's a source from today about how people were shot trying to get food at the humanitarian sites. And then I got blocked. Also, they tried to pull this really interesting thing, not them, but somebody else in the thread. Basically, it was me against like 4 people in this thread. All like really skirting, insinuating that I was anti-Semitic for even having this side of the discussion. They said, how did this come up? Oh, they were saying like, basically I was, and actually I had misread a situation having to do with like a Brooklyn Pride event being canceled, which is neither here nor there. Basically, I started into this discussion with what I did a little research that was incorrect. And so I thought that this synagogue in Brooklyn was more Zionist than they turned out to be. They actually turned out to be pretty like anti-Netanyahu, right? And so a pride event was canceled at the synagogue. And I was saying that like, I want to support Israel and I want to support the people of Israel being safe. And I believe that the Israeli people have the right to, I mean, they have the right to defend themselves and they have the right to exist. It's always weird when people are like, do you think Israel has the right to exist? Because I do agree with like that lady from the UN that's like, basically like, the people have a right to exist. The state itself, there's no state on the globe that has the right to exist. Like everything is enforced by, honestly, like contracts, agreements, and blood, you know? Like there isn't, no country has that imprimatur, you know? And I think certainly, okay, let me get back to the point and then I'll finish that thought. This is the times when like my husband will say like, I think you have ADHD. And I'm like, no, I don't. And then I like can't remember what my train of thought was. Anyway, they were talking about that. They said that. Oh, I was saying that I think I should be able to support Israel and the people of Israel, like living, right? Not getting attacked like on October 7th. like, does it, like, obviously that's bad. But I don't want to support the reaction. Like, I don't want to support Netanyahu. I don't want to support the colonization of the West Bank. I don't want to support the starvation and the killings happening in Gaza. I have no strong opinion about Iran at this point because I don't know enough about it to know. It seems crazy, like that we stopped talking to them about nuclear talks and now there's like a full-blown war happening and we might be joining in. Seems like it's all a bit rash to me, but I don't know. Maybe there's some intelligence that showed that they had an impending nuclear strike and that this is the only way to avoid it, right? But anyway, I want a way to support everyone in the region not getting killed without supporting Netanyahu or Zionism. And what one of them said was, well, how would we support, stop Asian hate without supporting China or something like that? And then someone looped around back to that, like it was a big gotcha. They were like, you can't say genocide. It's not a genocide, blah, blah, blah. And then they said, how do you feel about China's treatment of the Uyghurs? Oh, it was like, what about this? You're Chinese. How do you feel about Chinese support of the Uyghurs? What they've done to the Uyghurs in terms of civil rights violations and blah, blah, blah. And I said, like literally 90 seconds later, I was like, it's a genocide. It's an atrocity and it's a genocide. Like, it's not hard to say at all. Also, it is slightly xenophobic to be somebody like me who I do not really claim like that I have Chinese national ties. I was born in Mississippi. I'm not a person that I really identifies with the Chinese government. So the idea that I would, honestly, if you knew me, you'd just be like, am I some reflexive defender of the Chinese government? That's crazy. That does feel a little xenophobic because just to associate a Chinese American person to be like, you're Chinese and like like vouch for or decry the actions of the Chinese government. And to think that is a gotcha. Actually, I think that's what feels xenophobic to me. To think that you got me on that like it was such a link that I would be like, oh, no, you're right. I have to like defend my home country. My home country is America. I was born in Mississippi. I grew up in North Carolina and Texas. My home country is like a pig getting roasted out in the yard at a pig picking. Also, it's very easy to support like the people of a country and not the government. I would hope a lot of people support American people, and I don't care if they support the American government. The American government sucks right now. Why would you support this administration? It'd be like if we were abroad as Americans and reflexively having to defend everything Donald Trump did. That's crazy. So, yeah, I don't see a world where it's good for us to not be able to criticize what Israel is doing without it being framed as this is either anti-Semitic or you are making the world more dangerous for Jewish people by bringing up the fact that like Israel is killing and starving people in Gaza, that they are like occupying and expanding that occupation in the West Bank. Like, You can say all the shit you want about America. Like, actually, there's a part of me that also feels like whether or not it endangers people, it's still important to say what you think is the truth about a situation. So, like, I wouldn't be surprised if saying things about what Donald Trump is doing in America might make things more hostile or even dangerous for Americans abroad. That doesn't change the fact that what Trump is doing is bad. It might make it that you need to be more cognizant of who you say these things to or whatever. But what I'm trying to avoid by making an episode like this and maybe I'm trying to essentially dip my toe into this world of, can I say out loud how I really feel about something? Of course, I will find people that will support the things I say in this video. Can I survive the people that will say what I'm saying is awful? Because do I want to live in a world as an artist where I'm trying to only construct things that fit into what everyone thinks already? Or like I'm overly mindful of like minimizing backlash. And I would bet that there's actually some path through that where if you can develop the skin for it, which I don't know that I have, to be forthright with how you feel about things, that there's this thing on the other side where it comes off as a position of strength. You know, and I mean, I think that is obviously available because there's lots of people on both sides, including people that are, in my opinion, are so wrong and stupid and ill-informed that just say whatever they want. I think part of the frustration for me sometimes comes from the fact that, like, I feel like that if you're, what's funny is I consider myself progressive. I know many progressives would not, especially like what I would consider cosplay progressives on the internet. But like, what's annoying is if you live in these spaces, you actually feel more like having to be so careful about what you say. And then on the other side are a bunch of people that just say whatever they want and they do fine. I know I've been chewing over these same things from one of these episodes to the other. And I think you can probably see from one episode of, this to the next one that I'm gradually like saying more about it. And I think part of the reason is going back to the idea of like, there's just people in your life that have sort of like part of their brain devoted to a cult, is that over the last month here in Portland, I have met people, let's just take the 3 topics I've mentioned before, which would be like a Trump supporter, someone who's anti-AI, and somebody who's a Zionist. I have met people in all of those camps here in Portland that have been utterly delightful to hang out with. I would say delightful to collaborate with, delightful people to know, delightful people to play games with, delightful people even to create art with, maybe less so that. But like people that I would have in my life. And I'll just tell you where I am today. I am personally not in the I'm going to shut them out of my life point of view right now. Again, I actually don't know that I have that luxury. Also, some of the people I'm talking about are like, sometimes it's not just like a social connection. Sometimes it's like, oh, that is a person that I might work with, right? But no, I whatever reason, I don't feel in that spirit right now. Maybe I'll change. Maybe it'll change, But I guess there is a worry that like you cut out all these people you don't agree with, and then you end up in a bubble of people that all like, is it a sustainable bubble? Like, can I function in the world in a very tiny bubble of people? I don't know. Anyway, I don't feel that way right now, so I'm not going to do it. Okay, so if people don't like that, that's just not where I'm at right now. But there's a second question of like, do I rein in my thoughts about things? Because I have felt, boy, have I felt multiple times where I brush up with any one of these three topics, being anti-Trump, me being mildly positive about AI, and me being anti-Zionist. In all three of these situations, I've been in social situations where I started to say things, I mean, not even like stridently in support of my position on those things. Just like mildly think, or sometimes what happens is you're in a circle and you sort of say a joke or something where you kind of like it's like built on an assumption that we all sort of think the same way. Ha ha ha, wouldn't it be funny if this, whatever? And I have felt that moment of like, ooh, I'll pull back on what I'm saying. And I think probably, honestly, in social situations, I might still. But I don't think I want to pull back. I don't think engaging in this kind of like artistic life, I don't want to pull back. It's not interesting to me as an artist. It's not interesting to me as just like conversation. And I actually don't think that I have the capacity to accurately navigate all of the positions that I'm supposed to be taking, you know? I don't think that I am up to date enough on the 100 different opinions that are the correct ones for me to have. So I'm going to let you tell me about it. Yeah, I think part of it is I need to find people that I can have like genuine, productive arguments with about this kind of stuff. The funny thing is about Gaza and leftism and all that stuff, my productive conversations come with people that are further left than me and generally not from the center. So, I mean, I'll have them as guests at some point. But this is where I'm at today. It's June 2025 here in Portland, Oregon. Because I think it's possible that it's not tenable to just make comedy and other stuff and like, at least for me, I was thinking about like, you know, would I even need to make a show like this and be overtly like comment on current events and stuff like that? And I think it's that it leaks into my comedy anyway. Like my stand-up and my solo shows end up being political. And then even me like saying that I'm gay in a show ends up being political, you know, or ends up like having some knock-on effects in terms of like, and good and bad, right? But like, it ends up being in there anyway. Like, I don't think I'm a person, a comedian or an actor or a theater maker that is going to be able to just make things that people enjoy. Like, I wish I was a person that could just make things that, like, you know, when you want to get your mind off of the world, you just tune into a good old Chris Grace podcast. I don't think I'm built that way. So the idea of sort of like never saying what I think about these issues just doesn't seem viable to me. It's like, put it this way, there's not an anodyne version of myself that I can present to the public and still follow my dreams of being an artist and a comedian that is just entertainment. So because of that, I think that I have to sort of like tear off the Band-Aid and just start saying what I think. And hopefully people won't hate me. Hey, if you enjoyed that and you want to get more behind the scenes, if you want to see this stuff early, you could join the Patreons here and go to patreon.com/chrisgracecomedy and get some membership going. Come on in. Lots of stuff in there. Lots of fun stuff in there. Not just me talking about the world. It's in there.